So friends, for today's video, I wanted to go through 10 books that I picked up within 2025 that I think are severely underhyped. When I say severely underhyped, the majority of these fall under less than 10,000 ratings, some of them less than 5, and some of them less than 1,000. So as I go through these, I'll let you know at the time that I was looking into this, how many ratings that they had, so that you can see truly a lot of these have just genuinely not gotten a lot of attention, and a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to check these out. And hopefully we'll remedy that today, because I think a lot of you are going to find at least a couple of books on this list that sound like something you might be interested in. Some of these I have gone more in depth in other videos, so I'll have reviews for them linked. There is an exception with the first two, which we'll get into in a moment, but I would love to know, before I jump into my list of most underhyped books that I genuinely think are fantastic and I want more people to pick them up, what would be your top 1, 2, or 3 underhyped books that you picked up in 2025. While today I am going to be sticking to fantasy, feel free to branch out and mention books from other genres as well. I always love doing everything I can to give attention to books that I think genuinely deserve it. All that said, we'll go ahead and jump into it. I mentioned that the first 2 books are going to be kind of an exception to something that I'm going to be doing throughout the rest of the video. So while I'm describing this as the 10 most underhyped books I picked up in 2025, the first 2 I have yet to have a chance to talk about. I'm actually going to be talking about these in 2026 specific videos as well, but I'm counting them today because the whole point of this is that these books don't have enough love. We haven't talked about these books collectively very much, so I don't mind cheating a little bit, having these books, because I did technically read them in 2025, talking about them now, and talking about again soon. So the 2 books would be The Legacy of Brightwash as well as The Wickwire Watch. Both of these books are self-published books. Both of these are books that I picked up for the steampunk video that is still coming. I'm just trying to figure out the specifics as to how I want to edit it and structure it and those sorts of things. And both of these fall under Gaslamp and steampunk. These are both very, very good. I would say The Wickwire Watch feels in some ways actually, not that they're that similar, but there are pieces of how things progress that remind me the tiniest bit of The Will of the Many, just in some interesting world building things that happen later on, which you wouldn't think when you first start, nor would I say it's a one-to-one comparison by any means, but some of those kind of out there interesting world building details that surprise you because you think you have a firm grasp on what's transpiring throughout the story. The initial setup is that you follow this young boy as well as somebody who is a grown man, and the young boy stumbles upon this watch that it turns out has some magical properties, and ever since taking this watch, there are now these ghost-like beings, these wraith-like beings that are essentially stalking him and putting him in harm's way, and he is given an opportunity to have safety through this group that he then discovers are considered dangerous rebels throughout the rest of society, and whether they are or are not is something that he is trying to determine, as he is currently allying with them. But he is somebody who has lived a very difficult life, so he'll take safety where he can, but he's always got his guard up, always knowing he doesn't know who he can trust. And then another character is an adult who feels like this child's well-being somewhat falls on him, and so he's trying to help him. He seems genuinely to care about the well-being of others overall, and so he's trying to help this person, and he kind of gets roped into certain things with him as well. So you do have 2 perspectives, one who is very young and one who is an adult man, and I enjoyed both these perspectives. I liked the progression of the story, and I'm very excited to keep going because this is the first in a series. As for the amount of ratings, currently there are only 650 ratings on Goodreads, so truly not very many. Now the next one, Legacy of Brightwash, has 555, and while I liked Wickwire Watch, and obviously I'm talking about it because I thought it was good and deserves more love, Legacy of Brightwash was so good. I was bummed I didn't read it in time, or I should say I didn't talk about it in time, where I felt like I could qualify it under my favorites of the year, because this one probably would have broken into my top 10. I thought it was phenomenal. It's tackling so many things that we rarely see in fantasy, and that's part of the perk, I think, of its genre, or I should say subgenre, being Gaslamp steampunk, because some of the ways in which things are brought about, I do think that it utilizes the subgenre so that we can tackle things that are, I think, a little bit more relatable to modern day. For example, our main character is a grown man who has an adult son, and his adult son refuses to register for something within their world, and as such, he is being held in prison, and our main character is somebody who serves the authorities. So he, on one hand, is a part of the very institutions that are imprisoning his own son, and he doesn't want his son in prison, but he begrudgingly kind of respects his son's resolve, and he recognizes there's a lot of flaws in their society. And as he's getting older, he's realizing, maybe I'm part of the problem, maybe we're all part of the problem, but now that his son is imprisoned, other people want to basically blackmail him to do their bidding, or his son will have bad things befall him. And so there's a lot within it that you immediately care about, but there's so much more to it than just that little bit. That's kind of just the initial thing that pulls you in, is this difficult relationship between this man and his son, and the difficult choices we make in life, how we all sometimes are complicit in wrongdoings and the oppression of other people, and it tackles so many of these things incredibly. Also, our characters feel very realistically flawed. It was fantastic. 555 ratings, not enough. More people need to check this out. It was very, very good. A heads up that this one is very much an adult story, so the characters are adults. A lot of what they're dealing with are more focused on things that adults go through, but just a heads up, because I do think the Wickwire Watch kind of could be read by a slightly younger audience. I don't necessarily think that the Wickwire Watch falls comfortably, I would say, in young adult or adult. It could fall within either, but this one very much is adult fantasy and deals with some very, very heavy things. From there, we have The Councillor, and when I was looking back at everything I picked up in 2025, I actually noticed that The Councillor has some parallels to the book The Raven Scholar, which has taken off and taken a lot of people by storm. A lot of people have really, really enjoyed The Raven Scholar, and while the tone is by no means similar, I do think that if you like one, there's a chance you'll like the other. So The Councillor only has 1.4 thousand ratings, very, very underhyped, and we follow a character who is a scholar, and after the queen has died of maybe natural causes or maybe has been murdered, it's not completely certain, but after she has been found dead, this scholar, it turns out, was the one that the queen tasked with finding her replacement if something were to ever happen to her. So now we have this character trying to not only figure out who the next ruler should be, of which there are a lot of people vying for power, and trying to gain favor with her so she doesn't know who she can trust. So while all that's going on, additionally, this character is also trying to figure out if the queen was murdered. On top of all of that, you are also tackling this complex relationship she had where she really valued the queen and she considered her a friend, but some of the things that the queen put in place were not good for a lot of other people that our main character cares about. So there's a lot of intricacies within the plot. If you like intrigue, you'll definitely really like it, but I'm sure if you've read The Raven Scholar, you can see some of the comparisons of there being like a lot of intrigue and there being a murder mystery plotline as well. I wouldn't say necessarily that you have this school settings sort of set up and there isn't a trials plotline in the same way, but there are some things that play out that feel like, okay, all the people who want the throne have to be pitted against each other. So in that way, they do have some similarities. But I do think that if The Raven Scholar for you, similar to what happened for me, if the tone didn't quite click for you, but you liked a lot of the elements of it, the pieces of it, maybe you wanted it to feel a little more understated, or to put it bluntly, have it feel like a little drier and almost more boring in a sense, because The Raven Scholar is very explosive, which is not a bad thing, but I think intrigue sometimes is fun when things just sit and simmer, and I think that The Councillor does that quite well. So if you like that concept, then this one might end up working for you. After that, dropping back down to things under 1,000 ratings, we have Birth of a Dynasty. This one I hope will have a turnaround because it is a new release from 2025, just not one that I think got the same level of oomph in its marketing, and it probably didn't have the same budget, but it deserves it because the world building and the lore and the constant trying to determine what's going to happen next, the stakes, all of that was exceptional. I think a lot of people really, really enjoy it, and I could see this one being so edge of your seat and honestly probably pretty heartbreaking as we progress. Initially, you follow two very young individuals. There are a variety of perspectives, but the two young individuals are not only your main perspectives, but the ones that everybody else is kind of centered around. And Mukuru, at the beginning, his entire family is slaughtered. And then you have the other character who she, because of a prophecy, and I won't give too many details as to what that prophecy entails, but because of a prophecy, certain people in power want to ensure that they are able to oversee her life, essentially, and keep her under their wing. And so they bring her into their court. And so she's kind of trying to navigate that. And she's very young and she's very feisty, but this court is a den of vipers. And then Mukururu has gone into hiding so that nobody knows he's still alive, just waiting for the opportunity to strike back against the people who harmed everybody he cared about. So that's kind of the initial setup, and you're kind of seeing how everybody is connected. Additionally, you are getting pieces of their families and how all this came about and how we got to this point. And it's a lot of building, but that excites me because I think that's going to mean that the payoff by the end of the series will be amazing. But I already was very invested in that first book. And again, this one had 630 ratings, definitely deserves so many more eyes. This next one is one of the few that is an exception to the under 10,000 ratings. And I allowed this exception because first off, technically it's the first book that has a decent amount over 10,000. The first book of this series is at almost 14,000, which is still not the highest, but it's not bad either. But this particular book happens to be fantasy romance, and fantasy romance numbers typically are way higher than just books that fall under solely fantasy. So for that reason, I was like, I feel like in comparison, it's basically the same as the fantasy book falling under 10,000. And the series would be Mages of the Wheel. Like I said, the first book, Reign and Ruin, has roughly 14,000. So Storm and Shield is the book that I read in 2025, which is the second book in this series. I will say I liked the first book more, but the structure of the series means that your mileage may vary as to which one you like the most, because you have this concept that the character in the first book is trying to have realized, where there are these important magic users from various different houses that she is trying to unite, and in doing so she's hoping to protect the people of her land against outside threats. So within each book you follow different characters, and we're kind of building the wheel. And the way the magic is done in this is really cool, the political intrigue is really cool, and I think the relationship building is stronger than what I've come across in a lot of other stories. And I think there is a certain way that fantasy romance books tend to have relationships play out that's not as much my cup of tea. Whereas this one, I feel like it progressed in a way that I genuinely enjoyed. I think the reason I liked the first book more is I liked the characters more, and I liked their relationship more. And in the second book, you follow characters that are, I would say, a little different from the ones in the first, and they represent a different trope than what you get in the first book. So like I said, your mileage may vary as to which one you like the most. I've seen a lot of people like the second book the most in the series. It just depends on what you gravitate toward a little bit more. I would say this one was less politically heavy, which is part of why I like the first one the most so far. But in general, I think if you are somebody like myself who you're not opposed to trying out fantasy romance, you just feel like it's not working for you with the ones that are popular, maybe this one will be one to check out. Also, it is self-published. Another self-pub story, we have Dragon Mage. I have talked about this one quite a number of times over the course of the year because I read it earlier on, and I've mentioned it periodically ever since. Fantastic if you like that more classic fantasy feel, but the main characters are unbelievably likable and rootable, and they are such good friends. If you are just dying to get a story that has a great friendship at its center, this book fulfills that so well. And the world building elements and the gray morality and also the very difficult conundrums that present themselves over the course of this story are all done exceptionally. The amount of ratings this one has is 5.5 thousand, which is pretty decent, especially for a self-pub book. However, it should have way more than that, because if it was traditionally published, I not only think it would have way more, but I think people would love this and be talking about it in the same way we talk about some of our other hyped fantasy stories. It is fantastic. Can't recommend this one enough. After that, we have the Age of Uprising series. I read the third and final book in this trilogy, and the first book in this series by itself, the first book has 1.5 thousand. So obviously the second and the third are going to have even less. So truly severely underhyped. This one has pieces of Gaslamp and steampunk. This one has great political aspects to it. It's got guild wars, you could say, and there's a lot of upheaval from the masses and religion and people in the guilds, as well as people in politics, all kind of going against each other. The first book We do have a decent amount of setup. The characters are more apart, and so you're getting this build. And in the second book, we actually expand, but then we're seeing some people start to have alliances, some people are starting to clash, and in the third book, everything comes together for a really explosive conclusion. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I've described it as being just cool. It's just a cool fantasy series. And if you're looking for something that doesn't feel just like it falls within the sword and sorcery medieval fantasy, but actually maybe has epic fantasy with other subgenres mixed in, then this one's going to fulfill that. The last three I'm going to mention, I have mentioned so many times over the course of this year, and I have done reviews for every single one of these, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. The first would be Children of Gods and Fighting Men. One of my favorite historical fantasy books I have ever picked up, if not my favorite historical fantasy. It's really good. And it's at 5.8 thousand for the first book, so just like with Age of Uprising, as you go through the rest of the series, that number is going to drop. To Shape a Dragon's Breath, one of the only ones that I let be over 10,000, and this one is technically at 12,000 ratings. The sequel is coming out very soon. I let this one slide by past that 10,000 ratings because this one did come out a few years ago, so it's had more time to build, but still though, it deserves so many more. It's so fantastic, and even though sometimes it's sold as YA, I do think even if you're somebody who finds that YA maybe just doesn't quite speak to you the same way adult fantasy does, I would still say give this one a try because there's a lot to it that I think transcends the age range, so definitely check this one out if it sounds good. It is, in some ways, like historical fantasy. It's somewhat alternate history fantasy, and we're following a character who is forced to go to this school in order to protect her dragon. Powerful people are trying to force her to assimilate. Some people are trying to use her for their own political gain. Some people are very against her very existence within this school setting, and they want nothing to do with her or her people. And at the core of it, we just have a character doing everything she can to still be there for the people that she loves and also care for this dragon that she has the honor of caring for. And she's so likable, she's very rootable, and what she's going through is completely unfair, and so you're watching her have to face adversity. Children of Gods and Fighting Men is Irish historical fantasy specifically. The author is fantastic at transporting you to this land, to all of the power grabs that are occurring, and also following a character that's very likable and then another character that is not likable at all. You like kind of love watching how she just descends into villainy, or you could just say is villainous and just keeps getting worse and worse. She's a horrible person, but you can't look away, that kind of situation, and it's so good, but you hate her. You hate her so much, and it's great. It's great. And the other character, you're like, I need good to outweigh the bad in this story. But you also see how the characters got to the points that they got to, so I do feel like it doesn't feel cartoonish in any way. It just feels believable, and it's so good. It's so good. So good. Just sink your teeth into. And then last, of course, Talon Sister and its sequel, Titan Child. Talon Sister, I was so upset. It has 723 ratings. That is not enough. This is one of the best epic fantasy series I've ever picked up. It's so cool, it's so original, but also feels like it's paying homage to other amazing things about fantasy, other lore in fantasy. I would say it especially feels like it's paying homage to other stories within fantasy in its sequel, but it's so unique. You follow a society where they are able to create what are like superhumans through the use of Titan bones. Titans were these mythical beings that used to exist in a variety of different forms, and there were a lot of them. Most of them have died out, and now these bones are used by alchemists to create these superhuman characters, one of which is one of the main perspectives in the story, and you're following her as she is trying to get a firmer grasp on her past that has been forgotten because of all the enhancements that she has undergone. And then you are following other characters who are seeking out more Titan bones, and then within all that you also have magical beings that are still left. You have some of the Titans that still exist, and Titans are in the forms of things like griffins, wyverns, dragons, giant bears, giants themselves. You have all these different kinds of beings, but there's only a few that remain. So you kind of explore all of that, and some of the perspectives have horror pieces within them. Some of them feel more like this amazing classic folklore style of fantasy, and then some of it just feels so new and innovative because it feels like Jen Williams can't resist doing that. It's fantastic. And oh man, to see Talon Sister at 723, I was like, come on. It's so good. I feel a little less bad talking about it so much recently now that I know how few ratings it has, because it deserves so much more, so much more. As noted, Any of these that I have done more in-depth reviews for, I'll have linked. For Legacy of Brightwash and the Wickwire Watch, I'll be talking about these again very soon when I finally get around to putting all of the stuff together for the steampunk Gaslamp video I am working on. But any of the rest of these, like I said, reviews will be in the description bar. The books themselves will be linked in the description bar. Please give these a go if you can. They deserve so much love. And again, let me know what your most underhyped book was that you picked up. I would love to know. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.